term and a constant term.
Quadratic equation.
It is a quadratic equation, so how would I solve it?
So,
Quadratic formula?
Yeah, that's it.
oops.
I knew that's what you meant, but. Now, to use the quadratic formula, what form do we need to put this in? Oh, okay, I'll buy that. Now, whether you put everything on the left side or the right side is up to you. This is my own childhood scars. I like the quadratic term, the t squared term, to be positive, so I'm moving everything over to the left side. 4.9 t squared minus 45t plus 60 equals 0. And so, (45) plus or minus the square root of negative 45 quantity squared minus 4 times 4.9 times 60 divided by 2 times 4.9. I'm trying desperately for because the weasel not to run through my head. And I apologize if now it's running through your head. If you don't know the reference, good for you. And so I get 45 plus or minus the square root of this thing right here. And I'm thinking, let's see, so that's roughly 1200. So somewhere around the square root of 800. Probably a little bit more. Let's go with 834.7. $849 divided by 9.8. If we do 45 divided by 9.8, just ignore the square root part. That should give us 4.592. All right, so at this point, our two answers are
Negative 24.55.
something's wrong. Because we should have two positive answers.
We have a
Yeah.
positive 7.5.
No, it's not possible, yeah, 900, square root of 900,
Yeah, so this would just be under 30. Did you forget the square root?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what are the two numbers?
One of them is positive 7.57.
Or and.
The other number is 1.62.
Because 4 minus 3 is 1, not 2. All right. Seconds. Two answers. Right. At this point, so Tuesday, 9/8. Master set 2 is due. We're still going to cover some stuff next week, but these should be enough for you to get started on master set 2. And so you would go into Blackboard under assignments, under chapter 2, and there'll be the homework problems from the textbook, and then there'll be something where master set is in the title. It is 8 problems, some have multiple parts.
Can you email those dates?
Pardon?
Could you email those dates to us?
In theory. I figure I'd just write them down once and then, people hand them in, I go, oh, okay, that's the due date, so, but we can make it more formal. let's see, so 9-1, we got the quiz, so that's next week, and then 9-8, master set 2. If I'm off by date, because I looked at the calendar wrong, then just adjust, it's the Tuesday nearest that.
Do next Tuesday?
So next Tuesday, a week from today, you have the quiz on chapter 1, those are the textbook problems. I'm gonna take 2 of those problems, change the numbers, and that's the quiz. And then the week after that, master set for chapter 2 is due.
The stuff we did today was chapter 2.
Pardon?
The stuff we did today was chapter 2.
Yes,
Okay, quiz number 1, next Tuesday.
yes. Yeah, quiz chapter 1 next Tuesday, master set for chapter 2 the following Tuesday.
All these chapters are in our book too, right?
Pardon?
All these chapters are in our book too, right?
All these what?
The chapters are from our book, right?
Yes, the chapter 1, these are the ones, if you, under assignments in Blackboard, chapter 1, the document there, with the textbook problems that I'm assigning, as well as the solutions.
I'm gonna look at the video.
But they're in the book, so you don't want to do the solution because it's within the book?
Oh, whoa. The problems are from the book, I don't have the separate documents, so if, when you open up the document, the problems assigned will be at the very top, but then the solutions are right there, so. Shielded.
I just don't like to look at the solutions.
Yeah,
It's so confusing.
Shield your eyes. Pardon? There's no, separate chapter 1 or 3.
That was actually about to be my question.
And I think chapter 31 does not. Yeah. That's why I said calculation. Pardon?
Is master set posted to Blackboard or the master set to Blackboard?
Master set you will hand in to me.
Where do we find it though?
Under, you have Blackboard under assignments.
Chapter 1 homework.
Go to chapter 2.
So it would be. Oh, okay.
Master set.
Gotcha.
Do we need to have the same material? And do we have to, like me and my partner, do we have to guess the same material?
No, you don't. And if you wish to put a comment on the side of, he's a fool, can't believe he said it was such and such thing.
So I have a significant figures question for the lab this
Okay.
Thursday. Yeah. I know
You're
it's
gonna
your
make me,
favorite.
understand why you hate them even more? All right.
Yes, yes,
Right on.
absolutely. So going between, this table into this table, I just wanted to make sure the standard deviation should have the same number of significant figures as the least number of significant figures measured in the data, correct? Does that make sense? So like, for example, right here, this one would have 4 significant figures for the diameter because these were measured out to 4 significant figures.
It actually, this should go out to 2 decimal places because that goes out to 2 decimal
Okay,
places.
gotcha.
There was a bunch of addition going on there.
Gotcha.
And this would go out to, since that's in millimeters, and that's in millimeters, this would go out to 1 decimal place.
1 decimal place.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, so that,
In
okay.
terms of significant figures.
And the only reason that it does, okay, because they're not being multiplied or divided, they're just being added and then
Yeah.
divided by an exact number.
Yeah. There is a situation, which I ran into a couple of years ago, where there's 2 different ways of doing it, taking significant figures into account and actually coming out with a different number of significant figures in the end, depending on how you went about it, which is one of the reasons why after the first lab, I don't care.
Okay. And, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna bore you with some more,
No.
but, when I then figure out the number of significant figures in the standard deviation, would that then be 3 significant figures? Because then
The
you're
standard
taking
deviation-
the average
Alright, so you've got,
and the individual samples over the
Yeah.
number of samples.
4, and you square it, so there'd be 4 under the radical, so you'd end up with 4, so for standard deviation, you should have, it should be based upon the number of significant figures, not the decimal places, so it would be 4 significant figures for standard
Assuming
deviation
that-
for the,
For the
assuming,
diameter.
because those are all 4.
Right, so this one would end up being 3 because the least accurate would then be 3.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And so then the age would be what, 2? Is that
Uh,
trailing 0 significance?
So the average
Would be 2.
would be 2 there.
No, 1. Right? Cause that.
Oh. No, it's still 2 decimal places, because you add them up. To find the average, you would add them up.
Well, yeah, but then for the or for the standard deviation rather, for the.
Oh.
Balance, would that
Yeah.
end up being?
Yeah, this is what. Yeah, I think that.
Cause I had
that's what you're right.
I had some to do with all these, like the sig figs, but chemistry, it's not as, like, we did standard deviation like 4 times off the top of my head.
Okay.
And sig figs weren't even factored into it. And so, but the uncertainty would be the same, it should be the same as the standard deviation.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that I'm good with.
Okay, so the way I'm gonna do it is just, the least significant or the data point with the least significant figures in that category will be the significant figures for the standard deviation and for the uncertainty. Does that
I'll
make
buy
sense?
it, I'll buy it.
Okay. All right, and then for this, this is gonna, when I'm doing this is gonna be the number that I'm using, is this gonna be the average plus or minus the uncertainty?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Average circumference divided by average diameter, plus or minus.
The uncertainty for,
That propagates through.
that propagates, so I don't even have to mess with the dividing.
No, the uncertainty, so the uncertainty is gonna,
uncertainty.
so you'll do circumference divided by diameter, plus or minus, circumference divided by diameter, times the square root of
The,
uncertainty, the relative uncertainties added in quadrature.
okay, all right,
Okay.
awesome. All right, thank you. Sorry for,
No,
boring you to tears.
no, it's just, you know, and I'm gonna forget, they say the same thing about having children,
Mhm.
that, you forget about the pain when you decide to have the second one.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Let's